All right, welcome to the Wendt Show, featuring Manfred, Wendt, Jonah, Wendt, and Luke Ayers. This is a weekly podcast produced by the Wendt at Trinity University, which is a project of the Collegiate Network. We're going to focus weekly on philosophy, religion, and politics, and talk a little bit about the local news and what's kind of going on in the city of San Antonio. I'm Jonah Wendt, and I'll be your host.
I'm Luke Ayers. I got roped into doing this, and I'm excited for it.
And I'm Manfred Wendt. I'm Jonah's twin.
All right, I'm Jonah Wendt. I'm also the executive director and co-founder of Students for Opioid Solutions. And in the past, I've led a lot of campus activism here at Trinity University. In addition to leading the Collegiate Network project, I'm excited to see what this holds for us. And if anybody else wants to talk a little bit about themselves, they can go ahead now.
So I'm Luke Ayers. I met the twins on a service trip before our freshman year of college, and we've become pretty good friends over the past couple years. I'm kind of involved in the same, broader conservative activism they are, but my focus is really more in the pro-life movement. I'm a Dr. Joseph Graham Fellow with Texas Right to Life, as well as a William Wilberforce Fellow with Students for Life of America. And, Manfred?
I'm going to try and keep my introduction short, but I'm currently the chairman of the Young Conservative Texas at Trinity University, and I did a lot of things that Jonah did.
Yeah. All right, so in the local news, we see that a Democrat challenging Ted Cruz for Senate in Texas has apparently decided he just wants to end his campaign now. He recently came out 1 or 2 weeks ago and said that he would support 1 year of mandatory service for all Americans after the age of 18. As I'm sure most people listening to this podcast agree, that's kind of a little nuts. Luke, what do you think?
So I've always thought that the draft is little more than socially acceptable slavery. This might be a little bit of an extreme thing to say, but I think when you break down slavery to what it is, being the unconsensual taking of someone's labor, I don't really know any other way that you could refer to the draft or mandatory military service. We can talk about whether there are certain cases where mandatory military service would be morally justifiable, like in World War II. But I think that we need to call it what it is, and that in the absence of an existential threat to our country, I don't think it's something that you can justify.
Remember, most of the people in the United States graduate from public high school, and...
All right, and so Beto actually walked back this statement on January 8th, saying that I, quote-unquote, I've heard you and I'm listening to you, to his constituents, who apparently did not respond too well to him deciding that everyone should give a year of their life to their country, which by that he means the government. Now, Beto O'Rourke's one of the more likable Democrats out there. I know a year ago he actually did a cross-country road trip with Will Hurd that a lot of people saw on Facebook Live. I thought that was pretty interesting. He comes off as one of those same Democrats. What do you guys really think about Beto O'Rourke as a person?
I think that it's important for candidates, if they want to get elected, to be likable, but I honestly put more importance on what they actually stand for and the policies they'll actually propose. If I had two candidates that had the exact same policies, I'd vote for the more likable one. But, because our choice is probably going to be between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke, I don't think that likability is, the most important thing there. Because likability is not going to mean good policy. It doesn't matter if you're a nice person if you're supporting policies that will hurt people or make the country worse off.
Beto O'Rourke's always kind of come off to me as a blue dog Democrat. I don't know what his stance on the life issue is. Probably pro-choice though, so that's a instant no-no for me.
Yeah, so Beto O'Rourke currently holds the congressional seat for the 16th Congressional District of Texas, which is a relatively safe Democratic district, being in El Paso. So it's quite interesting to see him running for U.S. Senate, given that he has a safe seat. So what do you guys really think he's going for here? Obviously, he's not going to beat Ted Cruz. So what do you guys think the logic is behind running for U.S. Senate from a safe House seat?
I think he wants to follow in Wendy Davis's footsteps and be run out of the state. I think what he wants is to gain a national profile, because he already has a little bit of that, because he has a Democrat from Texas, which is, that's noteworthy in and of itself almost, kind of like a Republican from California, but not quite as much. But, I think that running for Senate, he's looking for some more upward career mobility, and I think that I'm not sure what his plans are, but I think that even if he loses, he's going to consider a Senate campaign to be a successful thing for his career, because it's going to give him national name recognition. And no matter how well he does, Democrats are going to, use it as evidence that Texas is about to turn blue, even if he gets crushed by Ted Cruz, as I'm sure he will.
Oh yeah, back when Wendy Davis said she was going to turn Texas blue and proceeded to lose to Greg Abbott by 20-25 points. I think one of the things Beto at Work's looking at here, he might be looking for a sideways move, run for Senate in Texas, get a national profile, and move to maybe a safer blue state or more purple state and try to run for Senate there and win. But he doesn't really, we all honestly know he doesn't really have a chance to win a Texas Senate seat. Ted Cruz has regained the hearts of Texas Republicans following the debacle that was 2 summers ago now, RNC, where he said, vote your conscience. And a lot of people took that for what they personally took it for. Some people said it was vote for Trump. Some people said it was not vote for Trump. But at the end of the day, Beto O'Rourke's not going to win. He's obviously running to increase his profile.
I see Beto is doing the same thing Wendy Davis did, which was running. Wendy Davis was running in a purple district, but I think I kind of see Beto O'Rourke doing the same thing, where he runs knowing he's going to lose just so he can be a fundraiser and do a bunch of Jackson? What kind of dinners do the Democrats do? Where you have Lincoln Reagan, Democrats have Jefferson Jackson dinners?
I don't know. No, I don't know. Don't go over there. And so San Antonio recently decided that the age of 18 is no longer, the people at the age of 18 no longer have the emotional, cognitive ability to make the cognitive decision as to whether or not to purchase tobacco, and recently raised the age to 21. What do you guys think?
Once again, this is the consequence of people not taking local elections seriously. Bexar County as a whole is about a 55D, 45R county, but the city government of San Antonio is 8 progressives, a progressive mayor, and then 2 not progressive city council members. So progressives, because of incredibly low turnout at the local level, have almost unprecedented momentum to push their agenda forward, and that's what we're seeing here with them focusing on stuff as tobacco, as raising the age of tobacco, even though the crime rate in San Antonio continues to skyrocket, and the police force in San Antonio stays historically understaffed.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed is that they're raising the age of tobacco to 21, but there's plenty of other products that might even be more dangerous that are acceptable to use at 18 or even under 18. One of the lines of logic that I saw coming from a lot of the conservative people in San Antonio was that you can't smoke a cigarette till you're 21, but you can get an abortion without your parents' permission under the age of 18.
At 14.
Or whatever it is. Luke, what do you think about that?
I think that this is, both the idea of judicial bypass for abortion, which you brought up, but also this raising the tobacco purchase age to 21. I think it's symptomatic of one of the biggest problems in our country and our attitude about the role of the government is that the government knows better for you than you do or than your parents do. So we're kind of seeing this replacement of the role of the parent being something that should be held by the parents, and then once someone is old enough, they have that responsibility over themselves, we're seeing the government step in and take that role from parents and then from individuals. And this is something that's really dangerous because I hate to make the slippery slope argument, but I don't think it's difficult to see, and I don't think it's that outrageous to imagine a scenario where you have the government saying people are not capable of making their own decisions and taking even more of our individual responsibility and our individual rights to make our own decisions away from us.
Manfred, what do you think about this?
Like I said, a lot of it comes down to how much power local governments have for considering how low turnout is. I think the turnout for the couple of races went to a runoff, but for the general local election, there was about between 5 to 15% turnout, which means thousands of people made decisions for millions of people in San Antonio. And I think we're seeing the ramifications of people not taking local offices seriously, because there are elections every year in your jurisdiction, and all those elections will at some point impact you. And local elections, even though they're not glamorous, they're not congressional seats, they're not Senate seats, they're not governorships, they're the ones that are actually going to impact you the most.
Yeah, as one Republican activist in the city of San Antonio says, the defense of liberty starts in your own backyard. What do you guys think about local elections? We have oftentimes see really low turnout, and then we see a lot of people kind of get very upset about the way that city council handles itself. What do you guys think?
So generally, I support more local control over, state control or federal control. But I think that, in all things, like these principles that I hold dear, like subsidiarity, like breaking down decisions to the most local level possible, have to be tempered by a respect for individual rights, which is why we don't have an absolute democracy in this country. We have a federalist republic that has certain individual rights enshrined in the Constitution that can't be taken away. And I think that certain principles, like, the ability to, if you want to go and buy cigarettes and smoke 15 packs a day, that's a bad decision, but I think that we should protect the right for people to make that decision. Once they're 18, which is, a very reasonable age to put that at.
Yeah, 18 is a reasonable age. You know what's going on at the age of 18. So recently, the San Antonio Symphony announced it was going to shut down its remaining schedule due to the absence of support. But apparently the city got together and the symphony will continue and play the most of its remaining schedule. What do you guys think about the symphony?
Is it publicly funded at all?
I believe it is. I'm not 100% sure. But I don't know. We're at the point where symphonies are kind of dying and maybe it's something that just needs to go. I don't really enjoy the government subsidizing most things, and I'm sure most San Antonians, while they enjoy the concept of having a symphony, don't really enjoy it on a daily basis.
Yeah, this comes down to a really difficult question of calculating cost and benefit when you aren't just dealing with simple numbers of like revenue and expenditures. Because there is a certain amount of value that a city might gain from knowing like we're a city with a symphony. This is something we can be proud of. And I don't know. I don't have a simple answer for how much that should factor into our public policy making. Our decisions about what public programs to fund versus which to cut, because if there's some things like public education, it's a little easier to see the benefits that we get from that. But just knowing that we have a symphony in town, that's a little bit more abstract, and I don't think there's a simple answer for determining how we should choose to fund that.
I think going to the symphony is an integral part of. It should be an integral part of a young person's education. I know in Fort Worth, the Bass family who runs Bass Hall would make sure that all local school districts have the option of going to the Bass Hall for free to either see a symphony or an art or a performance of some sort of theater program. I remember going to see, what's the one with the rats? The rats? The Nutcracker. The Nutcracker.
The Nutcracker, yes.
I'm going to see the Nutcracker. And I think it's important that we connect children to the past culture of literature and plays and theater, such as that, because they're very integral parts of our culture. And maybe the San Antonio Symphony needs to look into how they can do a better job of reaching out to the community, because the symphony is obviously very important, but it's something that the San Antonio community wasn't supporting enough to maintain it, and then it was brought to their attention that the symphony needed more support, and the community came out with that necessary support. So I'd like to see the San Antonio community continue to take the symphony seriously, and let the symphony continue to hold the place in the community that it should hold.
So as we all know, in CD 21, the seat that was long held by Lamar Smith, who kind of rebuilt the Republican Party in Bexar County, he stepped down. He's announced he's going to retire at the end of his term, and now we have 18 Republicans vying for his seat.
Why not make it an even 20?
I don't know at this point.
You guys want to jump 20?
In? We could jump in. You guys, I'm not 25 yet, but I definitely would. There's a whole bunch of candidates. There's anything from mayoral candidates and former mayors and Susan Narvaez to state house members and Isaac from San Marcos, to former chiefs of staff for Ted Cruz and Chip Roy. I think there's 2 former CIA members. There's all sorts of people in this race. It's kind of crazy. So, what do you guys think?
I think we should start us off by applauding Lamar Smith's service. He was a stalwart member of the conservative movement while he was in the House. He almost always voted conservatively, had a very high heritage rating. You can always trust on him to almost always vote the conservative way. So I think we need to applaud how he held the office with dignity and respect for so long.
He was a stand-up guy. I interned on the Hill this past summer. You never heard anybody say a bad thing about him. And for those of you wondering, those 18 Republican candidates are Ivan Andarza, Eric Burkhard, Francisco Kiko Canseco. He's actually a former congressman from Texas 23. Maura Garza, Foster Hagen, Jason Isaac, Ryan Cross, Matt McCall, who's run in the past against Smith for the CD21 race, Susan Narvaez, William Negley, Al Poteet, Autry Pruitt, Chip Roy, Jennifer Sarver, Robert Stovall, who's the former chair of the Republican Party of Bexar County, Samuel Temple, Peggy Wardlaw, and Anthony White. And there's just so many diverse candidates here. We see Stovall. He's really trying to run in the Trump lane. I know he's got the backing of Parscale, the guy who ran all of Trump's digital. All sorts of candidates running this race. Who do you think takes it?
I don't know who I expect to win yet. I think, we were kind of talking earlier. You think it's going to be, someone who's more like a stalwart, like strong conservative and has that reputation. So someone like Chip Roy, and then someone who's more in the moderate lane. But, I've only heard of a few of these candidates before. I've only met a handful of them. So I really, I don't know who I think is going to fall in each of those categories.
I think it's going to be very interesting because in Texas, if you get less than 50% of the vote, it goes to a runoff, the top two candidates. But in this primary, across the United States, it's going to be very interesting because there's going to be 3 lanes to run in. There's going to be the moderate establishment lane, there's going to be the Trump lane, the populist lane, and then there's going to finally be the conservative movement conservative lane. It's going to be interesting to see how those lanes merge and split in all the different states across the nation.
Now, if I had to put my money on it, I'm going to say Chip Roy comes in first place, and then Kiko Canseco comes in second place when we go to a runoff with Chip Roy winning. Chip Roy's got the backing of Ted Cruz and Rick Perry, and they're both apparently lending him staff and data. I think that's going to be very hard to beat. Stovall's also a very interesting candidate. He did not leave a lot of the activists in Bexar County on the best terms, but being backed by Parscale, who was the genius behind Trump's digital movement, I think he can make some noise. So I'm going to go Chip Roy first, Kiko Canseco second, and then let's go third place. I'm going to say Jason Isaac, and then fourth place Susan Narvaez, and fifth place Robert Stovall, if I had to just guess. What do you guys think?
That sounds about right. I think Chip Roy coming in first, I think is definitely I think that's a fair assessment. I think only time will tell how Jason Isaac and who was it?
Susan Narvaez. They're kind of vying for the same constituents, though.
Yeah, they're kind of going the same direction. They both have been endorsed. Jason Isaac has not been endorsed by Texas Right to Life in the past, I don't think. But I fully expect both of them too. So they're kind of going towards that same group of people. So I think they'll be close.
I think it's definitely going to a runoff. There's no way a candidate takes 50% out of this race. Manfred, what do you think?
So I'm a lot less high on social media. I don't think that social media can make a very large impact on a presidential campaign. I'm not so sure how big of an impact it can actually make on a House race, especially in a primary. So I'm going to also agree with you guys. I'm going to go Chip Roy first, and then Francisco Kiko Canseco for second, Jason Isaac for third, and then Susan Narvaez for fourth, and then probably with Robert Stovall bringing up the rear at fifth. I kind of see Isaac and Chip Roy competing for the movement conservative vote because Jason Isaac's been a very conservative stalwart member in the Texas House. I can see Francisco Canseco and Susan Narvaez competing for the same moderate establishment lane. And then I can also see Robert Stovall trying to win in the Trump lane, but I don't know how much that Trump lane is going to be there for him in that district.
I think this could really show the power of social media. If Stovall comes out as a really strong result, it could show that there is actually strength of social media. I've done a lot of social media work in the past. I was actually the youngest national director of social media during the 2016 primary. I ran social media for Ben Cardin's Sewer PAC, and one thing that I noticed is it was pretty easy to get people to retweet stuff and have conversations, but it was always very hard to raise money, so we'll kind of see in this race the actual power of social media. We know that social media played a huge role in the election of Donald Trump. If you looked at the Facebook numbers, he was off the charts, getting millions and millions of hits on his Facebook page while Hillary Clinton lagged behind. Are we going to see if this is some sort of, maybe the Democrats aren't as good at social media as the Republicans are? Or maybe this Parscale guy really knows what he's doing. Any final thoughts?
I'm really excited for the race. I think there's a bunch of great conservative candidates, and it's going to be exciting to see who comes out on top. I hope it doesn't get too nasty. There are 18 of them, so it's going to probably come down to who has the best ground game. But like I said, I hope it doesn't get too nasty because there's a bunch of very good conservatives. I don't want to have anyone ruining their career, putting it all on the line for just this.
Yeah. Do y'all know off the top of your head what the turnout is for
the
primary? Well, so just thinking about it, turnout in non-presidential years is already a little bit lower. Turnout in a primary election is going to be a little bit lower too. So we're looking at 18 candidates spread between not that large of a voting base. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be really interesting to see what, how many people, how many votes the first round is won by, and then how many people show up for the runoff as well.
Of course. Now, there's some big news coming out of City Hall. Apparently, the police department or the police chief, whatever's going on, sounds like bad news. Apparently, they just released last year, there were some human trafficking, human smuggling incidents in San Antonio. On December 23rd, they arrested a man in southeast San Antonio for allegedly smuggling 12 people in the back of a semi-truck. And then according to some people, McManus, who's apparently the police chief, just decided to not hand them over to the Department of Homeland Security, which is the proper way to do it, and just kind of released them and let them out to a local immigration nonprofit. And now this is making a really big storm. George Rodriguez, which we covered on the one about a week or two ago, filed a complaint with the Attorney General of Texas's office, alleging that issued a violation of Senate Bill 4, which was the Texas' newest immigration law, the one that took down sanctuary cities, and alleged that violations occurred. What do you think's going on here? There's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of smoke in this situation.
I don't know. It's very complicated. There's a lot going on. Do you know? So sometimes when you have people being smuggled in the back of a pickup truck, it's like trafficking in people. It's
Well, you have to break down. There's two things. There's smuggling, which implies that the people who are being smuggled have some way either paid or are consenting to it. And there's human trafficking, which implies that there is not consent of those being trafficked.
Right. And I don't know if it's clear which which category these two things fit into. Because, if someone's being unwillingly brought into a different country, obviously, they should be helped by different nonprofits and different government agencies. And that's one thing. And, if that's the case, then I think that McManus, definitely handled it well. At least it's less problematic, because I don't know all the details, so it's kind of hard to comment on it. But, if they were trying to immigrate illegally, that, the state law should be obeyed.
Yeah, this is getting all sorts of traction. I believe it made national news a few weeks ago, or not a few weeks ago, but recently. Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, stepped in and called for the state to investigate. The San Antonio Police Department union has asked for Chief McManus to go on administrative leave. One of the president of the San Antonio Police Department union actually went on a talk show, I believe yesterday, or 2 days ago, discussing how they are personally very upset by the way McManus handled it, and they're wanting to put him on administrative leave. And then another news report coming out today saying that it's against police procedure for the San Antonio Police Department to run background checks on smuggling victims. Just all sorts of smokes going on here. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. There's a lot of smoke, and I wouldn't be surprised if something big comes out of this. Manfred, what do you think?
I think, once again, this is, with illegal immigration, you need to take compassion towards the people who are in a position where they feel necessary to do that, but you also need to take it seriously and make sure that the people there are not dangerous to society, and also that they're okay. Because apparently they fed them McDonald's, they didn't have time to run medical checks on them, although they wouldn't, in my opinion, they wouldn't need the consent of the people there. But they also didn't run any background checks. So I know that, I think it was 13 men apparently? Or 13 women?
11 men, 1 woman or something?
Because,
I don't know.
Well,
there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of it we don't know is correct.
If you want to play like devil's advocate, potentially those are 11 MS-13 members. There's almost no % chance there are. But you do need to take this sort of stuff seriously when illegal aliens come into the country. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their background is. We don't know if they're carrying contagious diseases. We need to make sure that it's a public safety risk to just let people go.
Now, one thing, the whole run a background check on them, if they're not American citizens, and this is their first time in the country, how do you run a background check on someone we have no data on?
I have no idea how you do that.
I don't know, it just kind of seems like a flimsy argument there, given that we probably don't have their background. Well, it was quite an interesting week in San Antonio politics, where you've seen the police chiefs under fire, the CD21 race is really heating up, and Beto O'Rourke's kind of coming under fire for his rhetoric in the seat in the U.S. Senate race. So it's going to be an interesting week. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to talking to you guys next week. Luke, Manfred, any final thoughts?
Thank you for listening in.
Yeah, it's been fun.
All right, well, thank you.